Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Following Me Around, and here's my obligatory, I can't believe the year's already halfway over. And it is. I mean, we've reached the end of June, July is upon us. So as I prepare to celebrate the 4th of July by doing a triple feature of Hamilton, Jaws, and Uncle Sam, I wanted to look back at the first half of 2024 and just kind of see the state of horror movies as is, and look at my top 10 favorite horror movies of the year so far. So, a couple of rules and parameters. I am looking at any movies that came out from, January 1st up until now. There's one movie on here that technically isn't in wide release yet, but I saw an early screening of it, and I can't not include it. It's actually part of the reason why I waited to make this list. I know a lot of other people had theirs out, by June 21st. First of all, I still had a couple of movies to see that I wasn't going to see until the last week of June, and I wanted to see those to do this list justice. So, this list will include those. I know it's a little shaky with the release dates, but you know what? I saw it. It's my list. It's my channel. I can do what I want. So, without further ado, here are my personal top 10 favorite horror movies of 2024. The first half. Number 10. Winnie the Pooh 2, Blood and Honey. I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say. Is this guy serious? We're watching this horror YouTuber, and he expects us to take him seriously by making Winnie the frickin' Pooh, Blood and frickin' Honey, Part 2 in the top 10 best horror movies of the year at the expense of whatever movies I leave off that you yell at me for leaving off? Well, yeah, but hear me out. Yes, the first Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey movie, had I done a list of the worst horror movies of that year, that probably would have been on it. I kind of love everything about this sequel, though, and everything it does with it. I love how meta it goes, that, they're making a movie in-universe about the first one, and that movie is the first movie that they're, openly mocking and kind of admitting, yeah, we kind of had to do that really shitty movie first, so we could do this much better movie. It has its flaws. It has its mistakes. Yes, it's incredibly campy. Yes, the entire gimmick is that they're ruining, a beloved childhood character like Winnie the Pooh, and now Tigger and Owl, in ways that are, almost, blasphemous to the Winnie the Pooh we grew up with. But all that being said, I look at it, what is the objective of this movie? The objective is to do all that, to take something beloved, have fun with it, and just the level of, meta satire it goes, admitting how bad the first movie is, making fun of how bad the first movie is, and kind of winking to the audience you know what? Thank you for putting up with that first movie. Here's your reward, the second movie. I was really not expecting to like it as much as I did. Is it Casablanca? Is it Gone with the Wind? No, but it is a perfect movie in the sense that it perfectly does what it is trying to do. And it's probably the ones I will remember most from this year, if I'm just being honest. Number 9, Destroy All Neighbors. This was a Shudder original, and actually I think one of the first movies I reviewed in the year. It came out in January. I had a really, really excellent interview with one of the screenwriters of the movie. I'll put a link to the description below. Check that out. He was a super cool guy, and it was really cool of him to just talk to me like some nobody YouTuber. And, half of our conversation was about the movie, and then the other half was just about horror movies we loved and kind of what got us hooked on horror as kids. But I digress. Anyways, Destroy All Neighbors. What's not to love? It's like there's prog rock in it. There's nosy neighbors you hate. There's Alex Winters doing this weird, Slavic Dracula-esque thing. It's a movie that I think anyone who's had a terrible neighbor can relate to, which was kind of the point of the movie and was kind of inspired by that, if you watch my interview. And it was just a lot of fun. It was this fun blend of gory, over-the-top practical effects and just weird humor, and just had this spirit of like indie, stick it to the man, like our main character. He's doing prog rock. Nobody likes prog rock, but he's doing it anyway. This movie knows it's not gonna, win any Oscars. It knows that it's going for that campy feel, and it just does it anyway, and it has so much fun doing it. And music's pretty kick-ass. Got a pretty good soundtrack, too. Number 8, Abigail. How could I not include the Dracula's daughter ballerina vampire movie? This one, as much as it pained me to see, I wish Radio Silence was still doing the other Scream movies. If this is what they're doing instead, I'm okay with it. You have your big mansion set piece. You have a really interesting cast of characters, great ensemble. Melissa Barrera, Catherine Newton. I'm forgetting a whole bunch of others, but Giancarlo Esposito. Just a really, really solid cast. And just a fun, bloody movie. I think when you do, like, creepy kids in movies, there's a temptation for them to be, well, creepy. What I love in this one, Abigail herself isn't that, like, we know her deal, we know her MO, especially if you saw the trailer going in. She just has fun being the villain, and it's hilarious to watch these people try to, like, outsmart their way out of this vampire situation. Again, with lots of practical gore and blood. This was one of the most fun experiences I had at a movie. Saw it with a crowd, really recommend it. And honestly, the only reason it doesn't rank higher is I wasn't crazy about its third act. Had that, I think, worked a little more for me, this probably would have been, like, top 4, top 5. But I think it's right, it's right where it belongs, and it deserves to be on the list here at number 8. Number 7, Lisa Frankenstein. Speaking of Catherine Newton, this is a really good year for her. I mean, these movies came out almost back to back. Abigail and Lisa Frankenstein. It's from Diablo Cody, the writer of Jennifer's Body. It's from Zelda Williams, daughter Robin Williams, directing. And it's just, it's like if you took a John Hughes, 80s teen rom-com, but made it horror, it was Lisa Frankenstein. I loved how it portrayed it had all the glamour and the vibe of the 80s, but it kind of had the nastiness of it too. I liked that it didn't shy away from that. I loved, this was some of the best, production design and art direction I've seen in a movie all year. The dream sequences, you can tell that Zelda Williams came from directing music videos because they kind of have that vibe, and it's so surreal, and it's just so stylish. This is a movie that you're rooting for Lisa. Her stepmom, Carla Gugino, plays the evil stepmother really, really well in this. And even though they're doing horrible things, you're kind of rooting for her, even up till the end, where you're like, I kind of hope they get away with this. And, I mean, major props to Cole Sprouse, who just, using very little dialogue, he barely speaks in the movie, like, it's all body language and nonverbal communication. He does such a good job conveying a three-dimensional character that, has flaws, has hopes and dreams, without ever speaking. So if Abigail was one of my most fun experiences in the theater, this was probably my favorite movie visually to watch in the theater, just for all the crazy art direction and designs and the bright neon colors. It's such a cool movie to just, look at. Number 6, Maxine. This is that movie I was telling you about at the beginning that technically at time of recording and at the time that I'm releasing this video, it is not out in wide release. It is technically being released at the beginning of July, not in that cutoff at the end of June. But I'm including it because I saw it at the end of June. I actually drove like 2 hours to go to it. So I'm in the Philly area, and I drove all the way to Washington, D.C. to see it like 10 days early because, that's me. Also, really, really recommend the Alamo Draft House in Washington, D.C. It was one of the nicest theaters I've ever been to. Absolutely gorgeous. They even have a hall of movie presidents. because it's in DC. But anyways, I digress. Maxine, probably the most anticipated movie on this entire list. And aside from, like, Terrifier 3 and Nosferatu later in the year, the most anticipated horror movie I had for this entire year. I absolutely love X. I love Pearl. So the question on everyone's mind is, of course, does Maxine deliver? Well, the fact that it's on this list tells you it does. The fact that it is, where it is, also kind of tells you that. So, I love the setting of it. Ty West, famously did one of my favorite horror movies, House of the Devil, that was set in the early 80s. This has that vibe. I love the tone. I love that it's a giallo movie. It goes all in on its style. There's satires and critiques of, Hollywood itself and the industry, and commentary on, the adult industry and how those people are perceived and how people are creeps about it. And then you get into the whole giallo murder thing. There's a lot going on in this movie, and that's where I think it suffers a little bit, especially towards the end, where I think there's too much going on and it's not able to wrap everything up the right way. That being said, even though I liked X and Pearl better, Maxine is still a great movie, and considering the track record of, how final third chapters of trilogies usually are disappointments, this one didn't disappoint. Again, I like the other ones better, but this is a solid entry. That's all I can really say about this without spoiling it. I will be doing a full spoiler review / discussion about Maxine, probably in like a week or so definitely check back for that. But for now, that's all I can say about Maxine. Number 5, In a Violent Nature. Every year, you always have those movies that I think are just bound to be divisive, and In a Violent Nature, by its very nature, always was going to be. So, your gimmick is, it's from the point of view of the slasher. We watch him through the whole thing, and to, people who didn't like it, to their credit, yes, it can be boring, it can be tedious at times, but that's kind of the point, is that we're watching him go through the motions, we're watching him take forever to walk through the forest, we're watching him break into the visitor center and set this up and retrieve his weapon from here and set this trap that he'll kill someone with much later. I think, again, I look at what is the goal, what is the objective of the movie, and I think In a Violent Nature succeeds at that objective brilliantly, at showing us a window into the killer. And what I loved most about it was the way that it takes all the tropes we're familiar with slasher movies and kind of puts them through that lens. I love the campfire scene where the people are talking about, like, the legend of him and all that, and it's shot from that, like, voyeuristic perspective back in the trees, like he's watching them, and you get the sense that in every slasher the killer is just there watching them. I love how you had, like, this park ranger guy who's like, oh, well, I stopped him before and I was able to kill him with this, so I can do this. Suggesting that it's creating its own mythology, suggesting that In a Violent Nature could be like the second or third movie in this franchise, and we, the audience, are just jumping into this moment in time and watching through it. I love that it builds upon its own mythos. And the kills, oh my god, like, if you know, you know. Number 4, Stop Motion. Here we have another Shudder movie that I was fortunate enough to see in theaters before it came out on Shudder. I had to drive over an hour to find an AMC playing it up by Philly or somewhere. I don't know. Really, really disturbing movie. It's a British film. We're following this woman who's, she's a stop motion animator, following in her mother's footsteps. And somehow the movie manages to take overbearing parents and the lasting trauma they can cause and tell that story through the lens of the creepiest stop motion images I've ever seen in my life, made from, like, dead flesh, that I really hope was fake, but it didn't look fake. And I kind of don't want to know if it was. If it was real, I don't want to know. It had such striking, visuals, and the way that it blends kind of you know, standard live action horror where like you have your main character going through the motions, creepy stuff is happening, her friends and family around her are like, are you okay? Are you losing your mind? And blends that with the stop motion scenes and how like the stop motion starts to like mimic her life, and it's like the two are fusing. It just it hit me deep in my core as like a fellow creative, a fellow, you know, content creator, for lack of a better term. I hate that term. I related to it as like her own obsession is consuming her, and how like was she always doomed to do that because of the way her mother raised her? Is it nature? Is it nurture? It was a movie that has really, really disturbing and creepy visuals and scenes in it, but one that when I walked out of it, I was still thinking about it for like 2 weeks. Number 3, A Quiet Place, Day 1. If you had asked me a week ago, you know, where A Quiet Place Day 1 was going to end up on this list, I intentionally held off making it until I saw it and Maxine. And I probably would have said, it might be on there, but if it is, probably like 9 or 10. I was not expecting it to be this high on the list because I was not expecting A Quiet Place Day 1 to be better than the first Quiet Place movie, in my humble opinion. Love the Quiet Place movies. Love the, you know, the other two. Second one is an okay sequel. First one is like a great like family drama about them overcoming tragedy together in the backdrop of aliens. And that's kind of where this one goes. It's not really about the alien invasion. Yes, it's fun to watch the breakdown of civilization, and it's fun to watch chaos reign in New York City. That's always fun to watch. But that's not really what A Quiet Place Day 1 is about. And again, without getting too much into spoilers, there's this really deeply emotional, kind of poignant story about living life while you still have it, and enjoying the little things, and just cherishing every single day in the backdrop of this alien invasion. It does so much more than it needed to do. It could have just been a B-movie, sci-fi, horror, alien invasion, but it's not. It's this. It hit me right in the feels. It almost made me cry. I can't recommend it enough. Lupita Nyong'o, this is a woman who was robbed of an Oscar nomination for Jordan Peele's Us. And again, she's just as good in this movie in the lead role. She and Joseph Quinn, who you all know as Eddie from Stranger Things, total opposite in this movie. He's quiet, he's timid, he's very mild-mannered. But they find, like, these two strangers find this camaraderie with each other. And again, they kind of go through this journey that's not about surviving, but about living. Number 2, Late Night with the Devil. Shudder is absolutely killing it this year. 4 out of the 10 movies featured here were Shudder originals. 3 of which I saw in a theater first before they debuted on Shudder. In fact, I don't think In a Valiant Nature is even on Shudder yet, but I digress. And again, with this movie, heavy disclaimer, I hate the fact that they used AI for those 3 images. It really, really bothers me. I think they should just go back and replace those images with ones made by artists. They're not even very good looking. I can understand if you don't like this movie or don't want to review it or even watch it because of that. I get it. Okay. I said my piece. The movie itself, I mean, I love exorcism movies, and I love the way that this movie puts itself into that world. It puts itself into that, like, 70s aesthetic. It has the late night host vibe down. It name drops the Warrens, you know, placing it right in their heyday with the Amityville Horror. And it's a really fun 70s period piece that captures a style of entertainment that isn't really around anymore. And just throws it in with demonic possession in one of the creepiest instances of it I've ever seen. It's almost like because it's on a studio, it's on a stage, and, you know, with cameras there, and they're all filming it, it's like everything's out in the open, and there's nowhere for it to hide, and you would think that would take away the mystery and take away the scares. It kind of doesn't, because you get the sense of these characters, the deeper they go into it, the more they realize, even here in this nice, comfy TV studio, we're not really safe. And the further we go into this, the less safe we become. All while having something really interesting and important to say, I think, about selling one's soul, and the nature of the entertainment industry and how it does that, and using that very idea, but with the metaphor of demonic possession. And I mean, come on, David Dastmalchian. I've been a fan of his since The Dark Knight. That was his first movie role. It's a tiny role, but everything he's in, he just absolutely kills it. And I was so happy to see him in the lead role here, and just absolutely, he's probably going to be on my list when I do the, biggest horror Oscar snubs, horror movies that have been nominated for Oscars. Him for Best Actor is probably going to be one of them, because the Academy doesn't have the guts to nominate him, even though he was amazing in it. And finally, number 1, Immaculate. Fun story, I actually saw Immaculate and Late Night with the Devil on the exact same day. They came out the same day, and I did a double feature. One was playing at 6, and the other was playing at 8 or 9, and I went from one, it was in the same movie theater, I went from this auditorium over this auditorium with only 10 minutes in between, and that was not enough time to by the end of the night I was like, oh my god, I just saw the 2 best horror movies of the first half of the year, and I think I need therapy now. So, Immaculate. Yeah, we're going there, just like the movie does. First and foremost, I want to give major props to Sydney Sweeney, who proved she's so much more, she deserves so much more than Madam Web. She is excellent in this. She was a producer, becoming one just to make sure the movie got made. She helped make it happen, and it's such a disturbing, yes, it's the whole Catholic nun horror, pregnancy, disturbing stuff and all that. It just went places. Even I was like, oh my god, are you really going there? Are you really going there? There's some obvious, connections and metaphors and commentaries to things going on in current events, which I won't get into. But this movie, it analyzes those ideas. It explores those real life social issues today without having to beat the audience over the head with get it, this is the metaphor. No, it just sets out to make a really disturbing horror movie that apparently made people vomit in the theater. That last shot, oh my god, that last shot. That at the end of it, I was like, oh my god. I actually saw this first. I was like, I have to go watch Late Night with the Devil in 10 minutes, and I just need to cry for 10 days straight. Now we know what you're thinking. A movie has been noticeably absent from this list, and you may or may not have been thinking it should be in place of Immaculate. I'm, of course, talking about The First Omen, which, again, really weird that, these two movies about an American nun traveling to Italy, getting involved in this big conspiracy involving her getting pregnant, came out, 3 weeks apart. The First Omen is a very well-made movie. It's well-acted. It's well-directed. It's a great movie. It's creepy. It's everything. I love everything, the way it's put together. It just makes major retcons to the original Omen that I find unforgivable, and that's why I can't include it here. Immaculate, on the other hand, by contrast, looks so much better because it's an original movie. It can draw inspiration from the Omen and ones like it, but because it's not tied to that, because it's not a prequel, it's not trying to, be part of an established IP, it's more free to do its own things, and its own things it does. It is by far one of the most unsettling, disturbing movies I've ever seen, and that's coming a lot from me. I remember, again, that last shot at the very end, I was like, holy shit, did they really do that? Yes, they did. But hey, this is just my list. These are my top 10 favorite movies from the first half of the year. I would love to hear what yours are. Please leave a comment. Tell me what some of your favorite horror movies of the year were so far. Tell me which ones I missed. Tell me which ones I should check out. I know there's some ones on Tubi people are raving about that I haven't got a chance to watch yet. I will definitely try to do that by the end of the year when I do this list again in December, but for the whole year. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up trapped on a late night show with the devil while also in a Catholic abbey, while also with a POV killer coming after you with a vampire ballerina and some guy trying to do prog rock and Lisa bringing Frankenstein, and I'm running out of references, but you know what I mean. And as always, Every day is Halloween.